We have such a massive difference in media coverage between our countries. It's like a barrier between Russia and the rest of the world. Something that makes us harder to understand each other, like the news that you see in your local media turn opposite way in Russian media. Some news highlight only most preferable events, and some events can be even found in our media at all. In this video, I'm going to show you how Russian state media are portraying major recent events, the historic, or should I say hysteric, referendums, the Nordstream sabotage, and also the intercepted calls of Russian soldiers to their friends and families. Hi, my name is Niki. On this channel I have a variety of videos on my previous life in Russia, and recently I started to upload more videos on my life outside of Russia. If you enjoy watching my videos, please consider subscribing with a notification bell and maybe supporting me on Patreon or YouTube memberships. Thank you for that, and let's dive to the bottom of Russian news. First thing that I have for you is the annexation party that happened on the last day of September. If you missed anything, the story goes like this. In late September, there were annexation referendums staged in 4 occupied territories of Ukraine. It was called sham referendums in the West and historic events in Russia. As expected, absolute majority of people voted for joining to Russia, and I don't think anyone might have any different expectations taking into account how exactly the referendums were organized. A few days later, Mr. Putin hosted a celebration for accepting new territories, had a very patriotic and anti-West speech, and signed all necessary papers. As I see, the Western media say that it's like a theater play of desperate Russian president and that those territories will never become Russia. You tell me what actually your local news say about that, write that in the comments, and here's what exactly an ordinary Russian person might see on state TV.
Hello, it's First Channel News and Andrei Ukharev with you. Vladimir Putin this morning signed laws on the entry of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic, as well as Zaporozhye and Kherson regions into the Russian Federation. The relevant document is published on the official internet portal of Legal Information.
Here's all major points from that news report about annexation. So basically they share in details how exactly those occupied territories gonna be a part of Russia, and they use a very interesting grammatic construction saying that those territories are entering law and economic field of our common country, and until January the 1st, year 2026, it will be a smooth transition period of getting those territories inside Russia. Since January the 1st of the next year, the only legal currency on those territories will be Russian ruble. Technically in Russia you only can use Russian ruble to pay for stuff like going groceries or buying whatever you want, like apartments, car, whatever. So they gave themselves a couple of months to get rid of Ukrainian money and basically start using Russian money straight away. Before June the 1st of the next year, there shall be created special territorial branches of federal Russian government, and there will be elections for that. News also mentioned a good level of monetary and social support for people who keep living in those territories. I think I can describe the main narrative from Russian media talking about this stuff by 2 words. Россия навсегда, which means Russia forever, and that is the phrase that they use in every single of those 4 regions, basically stating that Russia comes to those places forever. And that is kind of strong words that I don't really understand why they keep using, because one day Russia and our president say that Russia is there forever and they are taking those territories, but at the same time there are still military actions happening in those territories, and like how can Russia promise that it will be there forever? Like literally, in the last day of September, Russia holds that kind of celebration of acceptance of those territories to Russia, right at the time when Ukrainian army was progressing and doing counter-offensive very close to these territories. I'm talking about Liman. Like, there is one thought that I have in my mind thinking about that. When our president uses such kind of strong narrative saying that it will be forever, like Russia is forever in those territories, then he has no right to make another mistake, and basically he has to stick to his words that it's forever. Otherwise, people who are supporting him, like the most supportive Z-patriots, will be asking like unnecessary questions and maybe even get angry at him if these strong words appear to be not true. And here I want to share a word about this video's sponsor, Ground News, an app and website I've been using to learn about issues we discuss in this video. What they do is they let me to compare news across political spectrum, so I can see how one story is covered from different sides, and that's exactly what I show you in this What Russian Media Tell Us series. Let me show you how it works. So that is the latest news about Mr. Putin signing law annexing 4 Ukrainian regions. On the top there is summary by Ground News, briefly telling you what the news is about. On here you can see the coverage details, and this particular case you can see that there's like 131 different sources for this story. Right below that you can see the bias distribution, and you can see that most coverage comes from the center, and left and right have about equal similar percentage. There is no real disbalance in coverage of this particular news, so that's a good sign. And from here you can pick the articles either from left, center or right and start reading.
Give it a try and support my channel in the process. For this, use my link ground.news/Niki Proshin to try it for free or subscribe for additional features. Now coming back to the video.
So this annexation story is a good example how one global event can be presented from two different sides. The next piece of news I have for you might be a bit less polarized, yet the Nordstream sabotage. Here is a short story for you. Nordstream is a pair of natural gas pipelines that run under the Baltic Sea from Russia to Germany. On September 26, two pipelines of Nord Stream 1 and a part of Nord Stream 2 were damaged. 2 days later, Russian Federal Security Service stated that it was an act of international terrorism, and they started their own investigation. 2 more days later, Mr. Putin accused Anglo-Saxons. I guess that's another example of Russian newspeak, like in Orwell's 1984. So yeah, Putin accused Anglo-Saxons in Nord Stream sabotage, and he literally said that just sanctions are not enough for Anglo-Saxons. They switched to sabotage on gas pipelines. In fact, they began to destroy the pan-European energy infrastructure. As I see in European media, there is a variety of opinions on this very subject, and European news have been very careful of what they say. And here is what a typical Russian person will see in our state news.
Not just a sabotage, but an act of international terrorism. This is how Vladimir Putin called the attack on the Russian gas pipelines of the Nord Stream system. The Anglo-Saxons, according to the president, have already begun to destroy the European energy structure. You can't say otherwise. While the Baltic has been talking for days on blown-up gas pipelines. Confused Europeans seem to not want to seek the truth, but the American trace is already so obvious that it's simply impossible to cover it. The overseas patron deprived European countries even of the hope of using Russian gas, and European politicians seem ready to publicly justify their patron. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service directly states that Moscow has data that points to a Western trail. Sanctions are not enough for Anglo-Saxons, they have switched to sabotage. Unbelievable, but it's a fact. By organizing explosions on the international gas pipelines of the Nord Stream, which runs along the bottom of the Baltic Sea, in fact they began to destroy the pan-European energy infrastructure. It's clear who might benefit from this thing, and it's clear that the beneficiary is the one who did it.
This news report appeared to be quite long, and here's all the major key points from the news. Of course, they accuse the USA in doing this sabotage on the Nord Stream, and they kinda have all reasons to say so and to accuse the states, simply because in the beginning of this year, American president said some stuff about stopping the Nord Stream and finding a way to do that.
There will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
So right now Russian media use that part of Biden's interview to say, hey, that's the job of America. And additionally, this news report shows more info on previous sabotages done by United States of America, and also provides a lot of tiny and maybe even unnecessary details on what was happening around the Nord Stream during the last year. A good part of that news report also talks about the outcome of this Nord Stream sabotage to European countries, basically telling how life in Europe will be different after this Nord Stream incident, and also mention briefly about European journalists who cannot say anything against America during these days.
Niki, the editor, is here. Right at the day when I finished editing this video, we had another huge news happened in Russia. I'm talking about the Crimean bridge explosion. And I thought it will be super interesting to add this particular news in our video, because it happened so recently, and it's also a very hot topic for conversations for Russian people, in real life and also in the web. And this time, instead of watching Russian TV, I'm gonna show you an online newspaper. And there's one thing that I want to mention about online newspapers, we are going to have a look right now. First of all, they do have high factuality on the stuff, on certain issues like this Crimean bridge stuff, but this factuality might be based on the words of
Russian authorities, which is not always trustworthy. So every time when I read articles at places like that, I see at facts that are based on the time, locations or anything like that, and I'll take it as like really high factuality. But every single time I see the article refers to words from local authorities or anything like that, that's the time when I have some doubts about like, is that real or not? This time we are having a look at Lenta.ru, one of many state-owned newspapers, and they did really great job at actually showing us the key points of this issue. It's really simple to read articles like that, and perhaps we are missing some additional details, but it's like really easy to understand. And first of all, they say about the location at the time. Early morning 6:07 there was the explosion at Crimean or Kerch bridge, and according to Russian news, the reason for this explosion was a truck full of explosives. Right after that, all movement between Crimea and the mainland of Russia basically stopped, and our federal authorities started to say that they will fix it ASAP, and local authorities started to say that they have enough supplies like food, fuel and all the necessary stuff for surviving for some period of time without having a connection with Russia. It took about half a day to somehow fix that part of the bridge, so right now they have partial connection using that bridge with like so many precautions that weren't there before. And also there is one ferry started operating already, although that cannot deliver like big amount of people or supplies. Immediately, local authorities started to say that they have all necessary supplies like food and fuel and everything to kinda survive when they have no good connection with the mainland of Russia. And local authorities literally say that they do have a 40-day supply of fuel, and at the same time, while saying that they have all necessary supplies, they started to have some limitations for people to buy stuff. For example, if local people in Crimea want to buy some fuel for their cars, they only can buy it inside of their cars. I don't know if that makes sense. Like what I mean, right now they cannot go to the gas station and buy gas in a separate container. They only can pour it inside of their cars directly. They also had some limitations for purchasing some staples, like the most basic food. In this article it says that one person can buy no more than 3 kilograms of this and that kind of product. And right after saying that, the article has a huge disclaimer saying that such limitations were really there in the first half a day after the explosion, but right now there is nothing like that in the region. It will be actually really interesting to learn if such kind of words true or not. And the last piece of information that I can see in this article is some words about tourists who visited Crimea during these days. Basically it says that there are more than 50,000 of Russian tourists staying right now in Crimea, and local government promises them to cover the cost of additional stay in their hotels. I think people who are traveling around Crimea right now are quite happy to hear about that. As for business and hotel owners, I guess they might be very concerned about this promise of government, because like I'm sure nobody asks them anything about providing free accommodation for like 50,000+ of people. There is not much information in this article how exactly the explosion happened. I guess we're gonna learn that in the next couple of days. And now, coming back to the last piece of news.
And the last quick example is something that is like completely missing in Russian news. I don't think I'll be able to find that in any of Russian state media. I'm talking about recent article on New York Times about intercepted calls of Russian soldiers that actually happened quite a while ago. It's conversations of Russian soldiers who were talking to their friends, families, like to their moms, and when I was listening to that, I literally was having goosebumps. I'm not going to give you any examples on this video, you can easily find that on the web. And as for people who watch like Russian state media, believe me, it never appeared in Russian TV, and even if the patriots will see such kind of information, such kind of news, most likely they will say that it's all fake or Western propaganda. As I said in the beginning, this kind of barrier makes us harder to understand each other, but I hope that someday we will find an understanding and come back to peaceful times. Someday. Thank you for being with me, спасибо and пока.